In August of 2020, a Kenosha, Wisconsin cop fired 7 shots into a black man's back and paralyzed him. Jacob Blake, the victim, claims he was only putting away the utility knife that fell out of his pocket, and the video footage of the shooting proves unambiguously that his version is true. Hey, I'm America's attorney. I've been a lawyer for over 24 years. I've helped almost 3 million people. Let's take a look at the events that led to Jacob Blake's shooting, the lawsuit that he filed, and the quiet litigation that followed. Jacob S. Blake Jr. is a father of 3, raised in Illinois, and was working as an armed security guard at the time of the shooting. On the other side, you have Officer Rustin T. Shesky, a 7-year veteran of the Kenosha PD, who had previously served as a college security officer and was trained in use of force and crisis response procedures. On the afternoon of August 23, 2020, Kenosha police officers were dispatched to a residence after Lakeisha Booker, the mother of one of Jacob Blake's 3 children, called 911 and reported that he wasn't supposed to be there. According to court filings, the call was labeled as a family trouble disturbance. Blake's lawsuit claims he chose to leave the gathering after a verbal dispute began between Booker and one of her neighbors. Within minutes, Officer Rustin Shesky and other responding officers arrived on scene and found Blake near a gray Dodge SUV, placing one of his sons into the back seat. From there, the situation quickly escalated. The complaint alleges that Shesky approached without announcing an intent to arrest or issuing a clear command before grabbing Blake's wrist as he leaned into the car. Believing he was about to be attacked, Blake tensed up and the officers responded with force, punching, choking, and deploying a taser multiple times as bystanders began recording. Blake got to his feet, holding a small folding knife that he had dropped earlier, and began to walk around to the front of the SUV and toward the driver's side door. The cell phone video, viewed millions of times, shows Shesky following closely behind with his weapon drawn as Blake opened the car door. As I mentioned, according to the federal complaint, Blake opened the door with his left hand while holding a folding utility knife in his right hand. Blake claimed that as he leaned forward to sit down, he threw the knife onto the floorboard and that his right hand was fully visible when Officer Shesky grabbed his shirt from behind and fired 7 times into his back at point-blank range. In his sworn answer to the lawsuit, Shesky admitted to firing his department-issued Glock 17, but denied using excessive force, arguing that he believed Blake was attempting to stab him or flee with the children in the vehicle. Not sure how he could be doing both of those, but whatever. The footage, which shows Shesky pulling Blake's shirt as the shots ring out, spread rapidly across social media, sparking nationwide protests and adding yet another name to the growing list of police shootings that defined the summer of 2020. 6 of the 7 rounds fired by Officer Shesky struck Blake in his left side, his back, his arm, with 1 bullet severing his spinal cord and leaving him paralyzed from the waist down to this day. The Wisconsin DOJ confirmed that 2 of Blake's children were in the backseat of the SUV during the shooting, narrowly avoiding injury. In the days that followed, Kenosha erupted in protests that drew national attention. DA Michael Gravely later announced that no criminal charges would be filed against Shesky, citing evidence that Blake was armed and that the officer reasonably believed he faced an imminent threat. The Department of Justice cleared Shesky under federal civil rights law in October of 2021, finding insufficient evidence that he had acted with criminal intent. Blake, as I said, left permanently paralyzed, later spoke publicly about the pain and trauma of his recovery, saying that the bullets took everything from the waist down, but that he was still alive for a reason. In March of 2021, Jacob Blake filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in the Eastern District of Wisconsin against Officer Shesky, alleging that the officer used excessive force and deadly force in violation of the 4th Amendment. The suit, brought under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, was led by attorneys Patrick A. Salvey II and nationally known civil rights lawyer Ben Crump. In his complaint, Blake claimed that Shesky's actions were objectively unreasonable and undertaken with malice, willfulness, and reckless indifference, resulting in permanent paralysis, pain, and emotional trauma. He sought compensatory and punitive damages for the lasting harm that he suffered. Shesky denied all allegations of wrongdoing and argued in his answer that his use of force was justified, citing qualified immunity, a doctrine shielding police officers from liability unless they violate clearly established rights. The defense maintained that Blake was armed with a knife and posed an immediate threat when he moved towards the vehicle with 2 of his children inside. The case proceeded through early discovery, including subpoenas to the Wisconsin DOJ and the Kenosha County District Attorney Michael Gravely, who of course moved to quash production of investigative records to protect ongoing proceedings, which there were none at the time. Though the lawsuit drew national attention, its resolution would come quietly the following year, far from the protests and the headlines that had defined its beginning. By the spring of 2022, the long legal battle between Jacob Blake and Officer Shesky came to an unceremonious and quiet end. Court records show that on May 3rd, 2022, both sides informed the Eastern District of Wisconsin court that they were finalizing a stipulated dismissal and requested to cancel an upcoming hearing. Just 3 days later, on May 6th, the parties filed a formal stipulation of dismissal with prejudice signed by Blake's attorney and Chesky's attorney, agreeing that the case be dismissed without costs or attorney's fees to either side. Then 3 days after that, the judge approved the stipulation on May 9th, officially dismissing Blake v. Chesky with prejudice, ending the case permanently. The filings do not mention a settlement amount, and both attorneys declined to comment publicly, suggesting that any resolution was confidential. No appeal was filed, and the federal civil docket was closed the same week, bringing the civil rights lawsuit to a quiet close, without a trial, without a verdict, and without the public disclosure of any terms. Now, the quiet conclusion of Blake v. Chesky almost certainly points to a confidential settlement, which is a common outcome in high-profile civil rights cases where both sides seek closure without the uncertainty of a trial. Although the court filings do not disclose any payment, the stipulated dismissal with prejudice strongly suggests that Jacob Blake and Officer Chesky reached a negotiated resolution. And this is particularly true given the fact that prior to the filing of the stipulation, they notified the court that such a filing was forthcoming. Had the case continued, it would have hinged on the complex doctrine of qualified immunity. In his answer, Chesky invoked that defense, arguing that his use of force was reasonable under the tense and rapidly evolving circumstances of the encounter. Under the U.S. Supreme Court case of Graham v. Connor from 1989, courts assess excessive force claims from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, not with the benefit of hindsight, a standard that often favors law enforcement. For Blake's attorneys, the settlement avoided the steep uphill battle of overcoming immunity in federal court, where many similar excessive force claims are dismissed before trial, meaning the plaintiff gets nothing. Jacob Blake remains partially paralyzed, but has become an outspoken advocate for police reform and rehabilitation, telling ABC News that his survival gave him a second chance to make a difference. In the years since the shooting, the city of Kenosha has expanded its use of force reporting requirements and equipped all officers with body cam, a policy that was somehow not in place the day that Blake was shot. Think about that. 2020 was not long ago, and yet there were still police departments at that time that did not require mandatory body cams on all police officers. Officer Chesky, who was cleared of criminal wrongdoing by both state and federal investigators, remains employed by the Kenosha PD to this day, according to city officials. For many, the case continues to symbolize the unresolved tension between law enforcement accountability and legal protection for officers. This violent police interaction was almost exactly at the inception of the BLM movement that drew national attention to a persistent social issue. And it's important to remember that the resolution of this case, however secretive, occurred in the context of that national movement. While George Floyd's death was inarguably the central rallying point for the movement, Jacob's case was, for many people, no less shocking and horrifying. What are your thoughts on the quiet ending of the litigation surrounding Blake's shooting? Do you think that there should have been more publicity considering how much attention the case originally garnered? Do you agree with the lack of criminal charges for Officer Chesky? Do me a favor, drop your pro se opinion down below in the comments. Let me know what you really think. And make sure that while you're down there, you lawyer up with me, America's Attorney, by hitting that subscribe button if you want to keep hearing more about legal cases just like Jacob Blake's. Hey, I will be back soon with another video. I don't want you to miss it, and I'll see you then. Against Officer... Do you think that there should have been more Do you think that there should have been more